to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Mr. Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, welcome to another fantastic episode. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's been a relaxing weekend, as listeners may know. It's been a calm Sunday for me since the Panthers played on Thursday. I didn't have to worry about any sort of heartbreak or stress or anything like that. UNC kept me up last night with that big loss. That was devastating. But you have a great news to celebrate. Well, I guess as we talked earlier, mixed feelings. But the Vikings had a huge win today against the Packers. So celebration maybe?
Yeah, a little bit. It's just like, again, for people who don't know, at this point, they were 1-5 coming to this game, and the Packers are like 5-1. I mean, they're really good and like competing for the division. And I don't know. I feel like it's tough for me to be super excited because I just realistically, how many more games can we win? And even if we do well, like the remainder of the season, like realistically with the Bears and the Packers, like how can we get into the playoffs? So if we can't get to the playoffs, I'd rather just get the best draft pick possible. So
Makes sense.
We'll see.
Makes
I don't
sense.
know. I'm happy for them. I'm happy Dalvin Cook had an amazing game. He's the best running back out there in my
Not until CMC
opinion.
comes back.
Nah, he's trash. But C-Mac's kind of getting exposed because they're not missing him like at all really as far as production goes on the ground.
That's true. Mike Davis has done well, but I still am a CMC stan.
I mean, I have him in my fantasy team. He was my number one overall pick. So I'd be very, very happy if he was able to come back and put up some major numbers. But
supposedly next week, we'll see. We'll see what
Fingers
happens.
crossed.
But Panthers have 3 straight losses, and they've got the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs next week in Kansas City. So it could get
and then they go to
4 straight,
I believe. After that,
no. After that, they have the Bucks. So
oh man,
Minnesota's somewhere down the line. But so these next 2 are going to be rough. But
oh wow, well, you tried.
But enough football
personally.
talk. Yeah, enough football talk. We don't need to worry about just being upset all the time. But we've got a great episode today. Probably a somewhat brief episode since. As listeners may know, last week we came out in the middle of the week, so we already covered half of the news from this week. So we've got a light news, and then we're throwing it back to a couple weeks ago with a review of On the Rocks, Sofia Coppola's movie on Apple TV Plus, starring Rashida Jones and Bill Murray. And then, of course, off the bat, I'm going to hit a little Mandalorian talk since season 2 kicked off. But it'll be spoiler-free, considering Johnny has not gotten to break down into the world of Baby Yoda yet. So we'll get into that quickly. But first off, how was Halloween? How is everything? I know you were with Reagan up in Winston-Salem. Did you guys dress up? What was the costume? How did it go?
We did dress up. I can't reveal just yet. But
is there going to be like a photo shoot that's coming out or something?
Oh, absolutely. Vogue has picked it up. It's kind of a big deal, but no, like it is like something that like I haven't even, my family doesn't even really know yet. And I'm sure I'll be posting about it like later today or tomorrow, but it is related to entertainment. It's a TV show. I'll say that.
Is this Euphoria? I feel like it's Euphoria.
That's a bold statement, Zach.
I mean, I know that Reagan loves that sort of makeup and style and everything, so I could see it happening. But
that's bang
I don't
on.
know.
You're
I
not
don't know
wrong.
what Euphoria character has a giant orange beard. So
yeah,
might have had to get
that's
creative
valid.
there.
That's valid. Yeah, it's more of like, I guess it would have to be maybe a Game of Thrones crossover with Euphoria.
You're Tormund and
Went
she's
that
rude.
route.
She's
But no, it
cool
was
or
fun.
something.
It was reserved considering the COVID situation. Usually a Saturday night Halloween, I think everyone would be out partying. I know some people decided to go ahead and do that anyway. We did not, which is perfectly cool to do, our own thing. But still fun. We had some Harry Potter on the background.
Nice.
Some lights going. So yeah, it was chill. It was fun. And she wrapped up her production and their show that they did the last few days. So it was kind of a time to celebrate that and just kind of relax now that's all over. So it was good. I assume that you and Remy Boy had a good time as well.
Yes, that was I've entered the stage of parenthood where I don't dress up anymore because I don't have anything to do, but I dressed up my child, my 5-month-old golden retriever, and now first of all, let me just get this straight, that I still judge people who go out and buy costumes for their dogs. This was entirely homemade. His name is Remy, named after Remy from Ratatouille, which is the best Pixar movie of all time. But no, that's another discussion. So I made a little chef hat out of some paper and some tissue paper, put a rubber band on it and strapped it around his head to keep it on. And then I put a wooden spoon in his mouth. He thought it was a stick, so he was all about that. Wow. And we literally had to like hold him still and lure him with treats. And I was able to get a quick photo before he like dashed off and ripped the hat off and everything. So yeah, I'm amazed. It was worth it for the picture, but he was not really a fan of the hat, at least.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's smart. That's smart though. It's impressive. Like the homemade aspect and everything, and strapping it up to his old noggin. That's clever. I'll give it to you. And the picture turned out well, so
thank you.
It's a win.
It. Yeah, but I mean, that was like you, pretty reserved. Other than that, I did not get into any spooky movies or anything on Halloween night since the UNC game was playing, but that was scary enough. Yeah, so glad we agreed on that. But yeah, so that was it. But other than that, not much popping right now. Just the return of Mandalorian. I think that's what I'm most excited to talk about today. I mean, this is a good movie that we're going to talk about, but Mando is something I've been waiting on. So should we get into that before we get into our news?
Yeah. Lead the way, Mr. I've seen the chapter 9 and Johnny hasn't. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to do my best for the listeners and for Johnny's sake not to spoil anything. This won't be too long since it's not really a discussion, but Chapter 9, The Marshal, came out, season 2 premiere. It was kicking off this new season, continuing right where season 1 left off. Mando has been tasked with returning Baby Yoda, returning the child to his people. He's been quested to find where that species is. This is a 52-minute episode, I believe, so it's the longest that they've done yet. And I thought it was a great premiere. I was a huge fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan in general, as anyone who listens to this knows. But, I mean, they did a nice job of kind of reintroducing us, getting us back into the world and stuff, but also setting the stage for what's to come and building on the scale of last year, not only with the length of the episode, but just everything that happens. I think that they did a really nice job of like balancing the Western, like the origin. You know how a lot of the talk about season 1 was like, oh, this is great. This is like the original trilogy's like Western serial cowboy show kind of thing. Like that was very prevalent here. Like even in Ludwig Göransson's score, like it almost had like the like that kind of like classic whistle. Style. Yeah. Exactly. So like there's one scene in particular where like Mando literally rolls he's like on his speeder bike and he comes down the main strip of like a desolate desert town and everybody's like looking out from their front porches as if it was like in Texas or something. And then he goes into a saloon and meets the sheriff. And so it's like, and they have like a standoff basically, but So they
Awesome.
did that well, but then also kind of blended it with the like modern Star Wars, the epicness, the scale of some of the sequel trilogy stuff, and what's to come, what we've seen. But I will say you'll be very pleased with something that it's not really a shout out to Dune, but it seems like it could be in the Dune universe, because there's a crate dragon, which is in, if you remember very far back in 1977 in the original A New Hope, when C-3PO first crash lands him and R2-D2 on Tatooine, there's like, it almost looks like a basilisk skeleton, like the bones on the sand dunes. That was a crate dragon. We're finally seeing it live in action, which is a nice like full circle kind of thing. But it's basically like this gigantic part dragon, part sandworm kind of thing that tunnels underneath the ground and comes up and terrorizes people. So I got very heavy Dune vibes from that. I was looking for them to hop on and ride it, but instead they just kind of fought it.
I mean, Star Wars, it makes sense. I mean, Star Wars has notoriously stolen many elements from Dune, dating back to the original film. So no surprise there, but I like that. I had totally forgotten about that original Star Wars skeleton on Tatooine. So it's pretty cool that they really did make that like a strong, like, connection.
There are a lot of like something as small as that. Like there are some way bigger ones that are more like in your face and more like, I guess, relevant to the plot. But I don't want to spoil those. But there are a lot of fun, similar to that level of like Easter eggs, just little nods of like, where have I seen this before? Do I know this name from somewhere else? Like this city. So they do a nice job of kind of putting enough Easter eggs in there to keep people looking and entertained. And we also, I won't reveal anything about him, but Timothy Olyphant, who we knew was going to be in this new season in an undisclosed role, we get to see him in episode 1. Who knows if he'll be continuing on and reappearing in other episodes, but I like his character. He was the titular Marshal as Vanth Cobb, so hopefully we'll get to see more of him. Him and Mando worked well together. Not a ton of cute Baby Yoda moments here. This was more Mando-centric of an episode, but I'm sure there's more to come from our sweet, sweet Baby Yoda.
Oh, no question. It sounds like a very, like, I'm more excited now to watch it, having heard all this, because it's, again, I've been fairly careful about not seeing or hearing anything that big, that goes down. But
that was like a big discussion on Twitter of people being like, what's the rules this year? Like, how do we, is it like once we watch it, are we allowed to talk about it on Twitter, or are we giving it like a 2-day buffer or something, like similar to the don't spoil the end game? Like, let's keep these spoilers off social. But I have seen, like, it's been pretty good, I think, of people not just like revealing stuff on social media, which has been nice. But if you have seen it and you want the full, all those Easter eggs, all those nods that I mentioned, we've got our full episode recap on the website on InsideFilmRoom.com, where I go in depth on every single thing that happened, go play by play, and talk about all those connections and what they mean. So if you've watched the episode, I'd recommend checking that out for a little bit more info. And hopefully that's something that we're going to be able to do each week throughout the season as we explore more of the world of The Mandalorian. But other than that, since Johnny hasn't seen it yet, we can't go too in depth, but we're going to go into this news now, which, like I said, not a ton of news, but some somber news to start things off. Another Hollywood legend going down in 2020. Tough news out of Hollywood when we heard that Sean Connery, most known for his role as James Bond, the original James Bond, passed away at the age of 90. Talk about a full life. What a legendary career for him, and just a life in general.
Yeah, it's this is, I think everyone knows it, like, to some degree, if you're a fan of movies, just familiar like with the entertainment industry at all, or have heard of Sean Connery, you've seen him in something or another. Most famously, of course, he was the original James Bond. He appeared in 6 movies, and he was in Indiana Jones with playing Indy's father, which was an awesome like pairing. And I think the thing that a lot of people, even if you're just familiar with the more popular stuff like Bond or Indiana Jones, it's like easy to forget that he has like a long filmography that dates back to the 60s. Even of course before he got involved with the Bond franchise, and he worked with people like Alfred Hitchcock or Sidney Lumet or John Huston. Of course, he won his Oscar in Brian De Palma's The Untouchables. 90 years old. I woke up and I saw the news on my phone like earlier in the morning, and I was just kind of like, it's just one of those where it doesn't like hit you in the gut like something that's shocking or very sudden, like Chadwick Boseman, for example, because that's something that happened just in the last couple of months. But it was kind of like, oh, it's just so sad. Like some legends like that, you think, oh, they're never going to die. They're just always going to be there. And that's kind of the way I felt about Sean Connery, even though I don't have a ton of exposure to him. So that it was just kind of like, but seeing that he's 90 years old, seeing that it was in his sleep at his home in the Bahamas, and he had his family there with him, it's just, you can't really be too sad because ultimately it's like the best way you could possibly go out.
Right.
Like what an incredible life and career. And, he's from, born in 1930 in like these like slums in Edinburgh and Scotland. And then he rises to become like one of the most popular, famous, iconic men in Hollywood and in film and in pop culture in general. So, yeah, I mean, what else can you say? I know you're most familiar with him from, The Last Crusade.
Yeah, really only that, I would say.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of the OG James Bond, so
Mm-hmm.
so that's, I just know him as Indiana Jones's father from that third film.
Yeah.
But still, just like knowing that, like you mentioned kind of off the top, that whether you've seen his movies or not, like everybody knows the name, everybody
Right.
knows the legacy of him as a person, as an actor. So it's definitely a big loss, but also like you said, that he did everything that he could. He didn't have any pain, any suffering. It doesn't sound like that. It was just a life well lived, and that we're sad to see him go.
Mm-hmm. And I think this also is a good opportunity when legends like this, pass away or die, and maybe you're not that familiar with them or you haven't seen them in a lot of things. It's like always kind of a great opportunity or like a reminder to appreciate those legends and go back and watch some of their films and kind of familiarize yourself more with their work. And that's always a good thing to do anyway. So I'm definitely going to try to revisit some things or watch some things for the first time of his in the next few months as I get a little bit more time to watch movies. So,
well, one thing that you can watch in the coming months is Mank. We've talked about it. It seems like every week at this point, but of course, the David Fincher Netflix film supposed to be getting all the hype for Oscars, whether it's director or best actor or anything like that. But finally, we have some early reviews. People have seen it. It is a movie. It does exist. And I think that I saw this review it was like a tweet from Clayton Davis, who's the awards editor at Variety.
Yes.
And this kind of seemed to be a good summary of like all of them, I would say, of what people were saying. Is that Mank has plenty to admire technically. Production, camera work, sound, and score are its strongest elements and the leading picks for the Oscars. This is an AP film history course for cinephiles, likely to alienate some general audiences. And that seemed to be like the general vibe that I got of most of these initial reactions, talking about like, it's beautifully shot, it's exquisitely crafted, it's a love letter to Hollywood. And as we know, Hollywood, the Academy, they love movies about themselves. But it also seems sort of like okay, if you're a cinephile, you're going to love this. If you're not, maybe not so much.
Right.
Which, again, this movie seems to be like, if it's trying to win Best Picture, like in what am I trying to say here? Trying to impress the Academy, then it doesn't really matter about like the average moviegoer, I guess. So I'm interested to see. I know we've discussed my sort of concerns about this movie, and this kind of makes me even more nervous of like, yes, I'm a cinephile in the fact that I like love movies, love watching them, love critiquing them and talking about them, but not in like the, I guess, OG sense of that word of being like the Josh Martin cinephile who watches all the old Hollywood stuff and studies about that, you know.
Yeah, you're more of a modern age, like stuff from like more recent decades that come after,
Right,
like the
yeah.
original Citizen Kane, for example, which is from, almost 70 years ago, 100 years ago. But I agree with what you're saying, and I agree that it is kind of. I mean, I think I said also that I had similar feelings about it. I mean, even for someone like me who has seen more like classic films or like older films and can appreciate those. I mean, I'm not really a fan of Citizen Kane. I don't love that movie. I don't like revisit it all the time. I've seen it just once, I think, maybe twice. And I don't know. It does make looks great in all the technical, aspects that you can look for. I'm excited to hear the score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They're amazing. And the black and white photography looks, really well done. And the cast is very strong, especially I was very, not surprised per se, but I was happy to see that Amanda Seyfried had gotten so much acclaim. She was getting more attention from these reactions than Gary Oldman or even like Charles Dance, for example. So that's going to be interesting, and it sounds like she'll be at least in the mix for supporting actress win. Yeah, so I don't know. This isn't surprising. It pretty much falls in line with what we'd been expecting. I'm a big David Fincher fan, and I have been for a long time. And I just this isn't something that feels like it would be something he would do, in a lot of ways. We all know that, or at least at this point, I feel like we should know that his father wrote the script and his dad passed away years ago. And I feel like it's definitely a personal like passion project for David Fincher in a lot of ways. And I think it's safe to say, for someone who's been in the industry for so long, who's like has so much respect from a lot of people that in the industry, I think it's safe to say he's probably going to win Best Director, unless they were really bold and wanted to give it to like a newer voice and someone who's just kind of breaking in, like Chloe Zhao or Regina King. But yeah, when it comes to Best Picture, like the big prize, if this is less accessible than something like A Trial of the Chicago 7, which seems a lot more crowd pleasing and seems like it has a lot more angles that you can look at it, especially from like a political standpoint, and like a timeliness standpoint. I think I still have more faith in that to like win or like go all the way as far as Best Picture or something like, Nomadland, of course, is going to be in the mix. One Night in Miami is going to be in the mix. And, but yeah, it's almost here. We're in November now. It's weird to say, but I think this is hitting theaters this month, right?
I believe
very limited.
November 13th. I'm not sure if that's exactly the date, but limited theatrical release, and then December 4th on Netflix.
So it's coming.
We should be hopefully being able to see it in the next few weeks via NCFCA stuff. But we'll see what happens. I'm nervous.
I'm kind of nervous too, but fingers crossed. I'd rather have like tempered expectations and be like, oh my God, it must be so amazing. Like I hope I like love it. And then it's just like,
Right. At this point, it is what I thought it was, or I'm going to be blown away by it and love it.
So that's not terrible. And I again, no doubt that it's going to be well made. It's just how much am I going to be engaged with it and entertained or what have you. So we'll see. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But I guess we do have a couple interesting bits. I did say we're in November now, which is weird, and Halloween's like sadly over. But we do have a couple pieces of Halloween related news.
That is true.
I don't think I've seen Hocus Pocus, the original.
I haven't seen it since like childhood, so I have at least seen it once, but not since then.
Yeah, so it came out years and years ago.
93, I believe.
Yeah, so almost, coming up on 30 years, and it's now being reported that a sequel to the original is in the early stages of development, with all three of the original cast members, the witches, coming back. And this is going to be supposedly a Disney Plus original. Of course, the original witches of Hocus Pocus were Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. I don't know. I mean, the director is supposedly going to be Adam Shankman, who did mostly like musical stuff, Hairspray, Rock of Ages. I saw Hairspray when I was a kid, I think. A Walk to Remember he also directed. And I did see Rock of Ages as well when I was younger. I don't know. This definitely sounds like a Disney Plus thing. Like it sounds not
right,
like
because this, as I was looking up the news, like learning about this announcement and the potential for it, again, I don't have that connection really like you to this movie. I have seen it, but I learned that when this came out in 93, it just like bombed. It was did nothing at the theater. And then it became like the cult classic that it is today, of like the people dressing up for Halloween as the witches, or like just watching it every Halloween, or having the marathons on Freeform or whatever. But again, I'm not super into this. I'm not super compelled by this news.
Yeah.
But it seems to just be like, okay, well, if the people love it enough, this is kind of like a modern cult classic. It's a modern meme. So why not cash in on that in typical Disney fashion and make this for Disney Plus, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And of course, it almost 30 years after they made the first one. So while you can, get the original actors together and make it, and while they're all interested and available. So it's cool news for everyone that's a fan of that movie. I'm curious to know when they're going to get this done. Could it potentially be ready for Halloween next year? Is it going to be not a Halloween release per se, or is it going to be sometime after that, or early 2022 or something? But yeah,
I feel like it has to be a Halloween release.
You would think, right?
Well, speaking of Halloween releases, one thing that will be ready, as long as theaters are ready next year, is Halloween Kills, because that was supposed to be ready this Halloween. This is the sequel / third movie. I guess that's still considered a sequel, but so there was the original in 1978, John Carpenter's Halloween. Then there was like maybe 10 other ones, and then they said nope, forget about those. And so then in 2018 they came out with the same movie, also called Halloween, which was a sequel to Halloween. And now Halloween Kills was supposed to come out this year. They wanted the communal theatrical experience, so they pushed it all the way. You can't release a Halloween movie in February, so pushed it all the way to 2021. So this movie seems to be essentially done. They're doing this one, and then Halloween Ends, which will be in 22. But we got a little teaser for it on the 29th of October before we all went out to trick or treat and everything, just to get everybody on alert. It was a 36-second teaser. And all it made me think was just, man, I wish we had this year. I saw people on Twitter not speculating, but just kind of wishful thinking, imagining like, what if they just made this teaser and then at the end it says available now on Amazon Prime or something like that, like talking about how much money they could have made if they did a surprise drop on streaming services right now for this year. And I was like, man, that's pretty. I hadn't even thought about that, but like I would have paid $30 to watch it on Halloween night this year. Like that, I would have been in.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. Just because.
Well, you haven't seen the 2018 version.
2018. I'm not really interested in seeing 2018. Not really interested in any of these movies. I know I'm probably in the minority with that, but I do quite like the original John Carpenter and his very kind of exploitation style, incredibly low budget flick from which was 1978, like you said. And that's again a great film. I don't really need a continuation of that story. I know that the most recent film wiped away all the sequels, which weren't really well received and kind of confused things for a lot of people. But yeah, I'm like, I understand the appeal. I mean, I think slasher movies are always going to have a place in the market, and there's always going to be fans of those movies, especially the iconic characters like a Mike Myers or a Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, and I get that. And I thought this was a cool little tease. And of course, this movie's done. I think it's safe to say. I mean, it was supposed to be out this month or before they made the change. I'm sure that they were very close to being done when that change was made. Now they're probably just sitting on it. A streaming release would have been pretty cool, just because it would have been such a surprise. But I also understand their thinking, and it's pretty popular thinking at this point from what we've seen so far. And Jason Blum himself, the leader over at Blumhouse, he has said this movie is coming out next Halloween, no matter what, like vaccine or not, pandemic or not, it's happening. If there's a single theater open, sounds like it'll be out. So I'm glad that they're kind of getting that out there already and just making people aware that this is not going to change again, and you can expect the sequel to come in 2022 and kind of tidy things up. I think that Halloween Ends is pretty suggestive that that'll be the conclusion of this whole saga.
I will say that by going ahead and announcing, we're making this is the second one and then a third one, it kind of takes away some suspense from the second one, because it's like, okay, well, if Halloween Ends, I assume Michael Myers is going to be in that one. I assume that maybe I may be wrong here, but that Jamie Lee Curtis would be in that one as well. But
yeah, I wouldn't be so confident.
She might die. Now that I'm saying it, she might die in the second one, and then because we were introduced to her daughter and granddaughter, so they might have to finish the job in the third one. But at least I'm betting the house on Michael Myers still being around in the third one if Halloween is ending then.
Right. I think that's a safe bet. But it is kind of it is reminiscent of. Now it seems like they're kind of going for these two-part conclusions to a lot of things. Of course, we know. I mean, it's kind of started back with Harry Potter, where they did Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, and then The Hunger Games did it, and Twilight did it, and Infinity War and Endgame. That was kind of the conclusion of that huge saga for the MCU, and we're now getting Mission Impossible 7 and 8, which they're doing kind of back to back, and it's not totally clear if that's going to be the end. If Tom Cruise is going to continue to do them after that, but it's been speculated, and now. We're getting Dune Part 1 and 2, and that's kind of its own thing. So it is weird. It's kind of interesting that trend is making a comeback almost. But yeah, I'm interested. I mean, if this comes out next year and it's like really well received, then that would probably be more likely to get me back on the train and maybe go back and watch 2018 and then watch that and then be ready.
But man, Halloween 2018. You want to talk about well received? It's a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, 70% audience score. Is that not good enough to get you on the hype train?
Nah, I don't really care about that, to be honest. I don't know what the average rating is for Rotten Tomatoes. I know that means that 79% thought it was fine or better. But yeah, I do know that when it came out, people were kind of surprised, oh wow, this is being really well, pretty well received. I'm impressed. But I was just kind of it's all right. That's cool. That's all good. But
missing out.
I'm sure that I am missing out to some extent, but I find it likely that I will eventually hop on and join in the fun of that. Okay, yeah, I just looked. The average rating is 6.78 for Halloween 2018. So that's fine. That's fine.
67% for a slasher movie. I'm still in. I'm still in there.
The slashers, you kind of have to take it's hard to get a really good one. It's easy to just kind of throw it, blood and guts at the screen and all that. But when you have people with actual talent involved, then you can get something more special. So keep an eye out for that. Go watch the teaser if you haven't yet. But while I liked that teaser, I thought that was well done, even though I haven't seen Halloween 2018. One trailer I did not like whatsoever was this reveal trailer for this movie called Songbird. I don't even
Not great.
Don't want to talk about this. I'll let Zach kind of dive into what this is.
I'll bite the bullet here. So this was announced earlier in the week, and then we got the trailer for it a day or two later. Because, as we're continuing through this ongoing coronavirus pandemic, what everyone wants right now is a movie about the coronavirus pandemic, and not just like a documentary like some of the ones that we've seen about like how the responses have been or anything like that. No, how about a nice fictional horror thriller movie about COVID? So that's what this is, Songbird, produced by Michael Bay, and it's set in 2024 because, you know, a year of our lives lost is not scary enough. So we're in 2024. The U.S. has been in lockdown for 4 years now. It's COVID-23 now. Forget COVID-19. So what a terrible idea this is. Like, I will say, so basically KJ Apa and Sofia Carson, they're the stars. They're a couple. They're separated by the pandemic because America is under martial law. There's mandatory curfews, all sorts of stuff like that. Quarantine camps that people are sent into. And it's kind of like a dystopian thriller future. I mean, KJ Apa, Sofia Carson, also starring Craig Robinson, Bradley Whitford, Alexandra Daddario, Paul Walter Hauser, Demi Moore. Like, I can't blame the cast or anything, but this is
I can blame them.
Well, I can't blame the quality of the cast. I can blame them for accepting this role.
Right.
But
that's true.
It's just so tone deaf. Like, in this moment right now, nobody wants this, as people are still grieving the losses of 200,000 plus Americans. Like, no one's gonna rush to theaters to see this movie. It's just a truly like baffling decision here.
Yeah. Like you, I just got to look at it before we started recording, and yeah, I was kind of shocked by just how like offensive it felt. Like I am not one typically to say, oh, they shouldn't have made this. I think you always, you know, people are free to make whatever kind of art they want, you know, what they're writing and what they're directing and producing, things like that. But this in particular just feels very gross. It feels very it's exploitative in the fact that it's trying to cash in on not just something that's happened, you know. It's not like they're doing a movie about the pandemic from 1918. They're doing this. We're literally in the middle of this. Like, we're at the peak of it. Like, this is the worst it's ever been as far as the daily, in the United States, of course, that's where we're living, Zach and I, but like daily cases, daily deaths, like it's all at the highest it's ever been right now as we're recording this. So to do this movie where you're saying, oh yeah, it's not just, you know, it's not like it's just set in 2020 and it's kind of like, oh, this outbreak's happening and oh, it's basically recounting what we already know. It's basically putting together like a nightmare scenario, and kind of feeding into a lot of people's fears or conspiracy theories where they're saying, oh, it's going to be martial law and the government's going to, you know, basically just, you know, police everyone to like a terrible extent, which of course we are seeing in some regards across the country, but like this kind of degree where it's years from now and it's, you know, they have all these regulations. It's very dystopian, like you said, and it's, you know, it's set in LA and it's just kind of talking about like what the death toll is, and it has like these patrols and these checkpoints, and there's people that are like immune and they have like bands on the wrist and things like that. It's kind of incredible just how, I know we've been in this for months and months and months now, but the fact that they so quickly were able to develop this concept, get it written out, you know, get someone to pick it up and cast and film it and all those things, just like, I don't know, it just definitely rubs me the wrong way. And I have absolutely no intention of watching this. I don't care if it had like 100% Rotten Tomatoes. I would not indulge in this. I wouldn't like support them financially or anything like that. I know some people are probably going to be more into this than others. Some people are they're always going to look for something. If it's a thriller or like a horror or something along those lines, it's easy to just like kind of get like a quick hour and a half or 2 hours of some entertainment along those lines. But no, I'm not buying this at all. So no diss to anyone who is, but I'm not super happy with the people that saw this concept and were like, oh yeah, let's take advantage of this, or the cast that were like, hey, let's go make this. Like, that seems like a smart idea. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think that kind of is probably how you feel about it, but
yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's not, There was no release date on the end of the trailer, so
Of course there was.
It's yeah. I mean, so I don't know if this is going to try and be a theatrical movie post everything, or if it's going to be a streaming release or what. But I can't imagine. Well, I would say I can't imagine, but they actually went out and made this movie, so I don't know what. I wouldn't put anything past the people behind this movie, but just to imagine them trying to release this on a streaming service while we're all still locked at home and enduring all of this, it would just be even more tone deaf than making the movie on its own. So
Yeah.
I don't know when to expect this, but whenever it is, I will not be in attendance, I don't think.
Yeah. No, agreed. 100%.
Shall we get into something a little cheerier, I guess? Something more
For
more
sure.
lighthearted and warm and enjoyable.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, kiddo.
Oh my gosh, do you look beautiful. Cliff, how's your mom's hip?
Good things.
Good. He thinks you're my girlfriend.
Bryce.
Been busy?
Yeah, Dean's traveling with clients all the time, and I'm just the buzzkill waiting to schedule things. I'm so stuck.
So Dean's going away a lot, huh? On business trips?
Dad,
Raise your hand if that sounds fishy.
he's not like you. He's a good guy, a great dad.
Sure, it's nature. Males are forced to fight, to dominate, and to impregnate all females.
Maybe he's just not interested in me anymore.
Really? She's back in town. Been busy?
Yeah. Got a lot going on.
Do you? He should be worshiping the ground you walk on. And if he's doing something dishonorable, you need to know.
What if Dean's just busy? I'm in a rut. That's it.
I think we should follow him.
What?
I think you better see him in action.
On the Rocks, Sofia Coppola's newest film. She's returning to the big screen and or the little screen in your home or on your bed or whatever. This is starring Rashida Jones, Bill Murray, Marlon Wayans. I really didn't know too much about this until just like the last couple of months because I know it was being talked about as, you know, film festival season was coming up and Sofia Coppola is a big name. And they were talking about, you know, the potential awards, you know, contention and things like that. What about you? Did you really have much expectation going into this? I know it's been getting great reviews as 86% critic rating Rotten Tomatoes, although on the flip side, it has 51% audience.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that before we get into like our scores or anything like that. But going back to your question first, just I didn't like you. I didn't know too much about this movie heading in. I really they've done like a decent marketing push on TV of like actually airing trailers for it and TV spots and stuff.
Agreed.
And so like my dad being 64 years old, he's like, oh, Bill Murray, let's watch this movie. I was like, I don't know if this is going to be like your traditional like Groundhog Day or like Caddyshack Bill Murray kind of movie. But he was like a big fan, so we watched it together anyway, and he enjoyed it as well. But so that's really like what I knew heading into it. I didn't know. Unlike you, I don't really have that background with Sofia Coppola to know much other than A Very Murray Christmas, the special on Netflix. But
yeah,
knowing that this is like A24 and they rarely ever miss, I couldn't like I had relatively high expectations going in, even though I didn't really have that background. But
yeah,
I want to go back to what you mentioned: the 86 critic score, 51% audience score. I guess we'll go ahead and share our scores to let listeners know where we fall. But I gave this 85%, 85 out of 100. So I'm pretty much right there with that critic score. Johnny, what was your total here?
Yeah, I gave it like 3.5 stars out of 5, so about 68, 70 out of 100. I thought it was solid. That was pretty good, enjoyable, as you said, very light, kind of, you know, more humorous movie compared to some of the stuff we've been talking about or been watching recently. It is.
But
I can understand.
What do you think is causing that sort of divide between because that's a huge 35. Math is hard. Point difference there between critic and audience. And like, I know we've seen movies like that before where there is a divide, but what specifically about this do you think it is?
I think it is. And I understand that score, and I was rubbed the wrong way in some respects with this film. That's kind of why I thought it was just good, or like pretty good, not great. I think that has more to do with the fact that this is a very, like, of course it's set before, it's not set in a pandemic world or anything like that, or pre or whatever. But it's in New York, and it's like everyone in this movie is like very like well off, like they have a ton of money. She's like a respectable like author. Her husband is running like some sort of business, not totally clear, but he's like doing really well.
Some sort of media company.
They live in Lower Manhattan. Bill Murray's character, that's her father, and he's in Paris, and he flies back to New York, and he's like trying to take her to Mexico and like on a cruise.
Former art dealer.
Yeah, and so it is kind of one of those movies where you're like, okay, it feels like borderline out of touch in a way, or like Sofia Coppola. It's just like, I think what she was going for is it was kind of almost like poking fun, or like kind of taking like a satirical angle on it, because I think that her life, Rashida Jones's character, it's like very boring in a lot of ways. It's very like mundane. Like she's kind of in this cycle.
It's repetitive.
Repetitive, and then it kind of this idea that her husband could potentially be having an affair kind of takes her into this like more wild and like kind of tangent, like almost like a distraction from like her like repetitive life, like day-to-day life. But it's not nearly as wild as you would like maybe hope or like imagine that like it would be. And I think that the movie was trying to make a point in that regard. There's also a scene I was like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of shocked that they kept it in, but it's a scene involving like Bill Murray and his daughter like getting pulled over by the police. And it's just like, I don't know, especially like just like the last few months, and like the NYPD has always like had a horrible reputation anyway, but like with everything that's gone on, it was just like they get pulled over and Bill Murray's like not listening to their orders at all, and like kind of just like disrespecting them, and like is like making a big joke out of everything. And he talks his way out of a ticket or like any sort of citation at all, and like his buddies with the cop and things like that. And then they just get in the car and drive off like it's not a big deal. The cops actually push them, their red Corvette, like old school car, push them out of the traffic stop and like let them go. And it was just like, I think you probably could have like gotten rid of that scene. Probably it just feels like very like, I don't know. I don't think it was like making a point about it. Really, I think it was just a thing that it included without any sort of commentary. And I think all that is to say that the movie is very much in a bubble. Like it's in this very like isolated bubble, and it's not doing a lot to really comment on it. It's just like presenting it, and it's not super like critical or like subversive or anything like that. To me, it just felt, it is very much like a day in the life type of story. It's, as you said, repetitive. It's her taking care of her kids and going to school and running errands and dealing with her kooky dad and like being suspicious about her husband, things like that. So I think that might be, I suspect that's where the divide is, because I've also seen, even from more like cinephile fans, like on Letterboxd, some reviews on Letterboxd, saying that it just feels very like out of touch or like boring. And I can understand the out of touch comments. I can understand the boring comments. I think some of that is to make a point, and I think some of that is also like valid criticism. But overall, it did win me over. I felt there was a good amount of humor. There was some smart twists with the plot. There was some valid, interesting commentary about men and men-women relationships and social division, like things like that between men and women, and marriage and relationships and cheating and things like that. So I thought it did just enough to kind of push it up above like mediocrity. But again, as we're saying, like Rotten Tomatoes audience is disagreeing. They think it's more like riding the line.
I think one thing that can do that kind of could maybe justify that audience, or not justify, but explain the audience score, is that it's very much just like you mentioned, like the day in the life kind of thing until things get turned upside down. I want to say before we move any deeper, just let me read this quick log line here. But so that if you haven't seen it, but you're listening along, that you know what's happening. But faced with sudden doubts about her marriage, a young New York mother, Rashida Jones, teams up with her larger-than-life Playboy father, Bill Murray, to tail her husband, Marlon Wayans, in a bittersweet comedy written and directed by Sofia Coppola. So that's kind of the, like Johnny's mentioning, the flipping the story on its head with the father coming in and bringing everyone on this adventure and that kind of the infidelity aspect and everything. But I think that it's very much like, sure, yes, things happen. Like they go on this sort of like mock investigation as they're trying to figure out whether her husband is cheating on her or not. But for the most part, it's just Rashida Jones and Bill Murray hanging out, riding around, talking, and not much like major action going down. I think that's something that like it can be good or bad. I gave me very like Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth vibes of like some people didn't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because they said, oh, nothing happened, with the exception of like that last showdown. But it's just like a lot of that is like riding around and living in that world with these characters. And I think that if you have the right characters, the right duo, that's not a problem whatsoever. And I absolutely love it. And that's the case in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that's the case here. I think that the duo of Rashida Jones and Bill Murray, it worked incredibly well. They had great chemistry together. I mean, obviously Bill Murray's like a comedian, a comic legend with all of his historic movies, but then Rashida Jones is kind of not really like an up and comer, but she doesn't have that resume. She's established, but doesn't have that sort of like legendary icon status of Bill Murray, but she's able to completely hold her own here, like going back and forth, like with zingers and witty commentary and stuff, making fun of him and responding back and forth. So I think that they just work very well together, and I was fine to just go to lunch with them or ride around and go get dinner or eat caviar in the bright red Corvette. Like I think that just worked. But there was one thing kind of that you mentioned that I kind of got off on a different tangent here, but you were talking about like the repetition, the everydayness of it, and the kind of keeping things at like arm's length with the characters. Like I think this movie's very light. It doesn't go beyond surface levels. Like you said that it like doesn't really like comment one way or another on things, and that can kind of work against it. I think it works for it and against it because, like, okay, we're dealing with infidelity. We're dealing with the father's constant need to be loved and be accepted. We're dealing with her Laura's feelings of inadequacy. So it's like very heavy, like real things, but they don't go too deep into it and keep it fun and exciting. So it's like light, but also like I kind of wish that they did dig a little bit deeper to kind of get into these characters more and their relationships and do some of that commentary that you were mentioning or take a stance one way or another.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. And again, it is something that Sofia Coppola does a pretty good job. I think that some of the strongest writing of the movie is the back and forth. You were talking about the back and forth in the duo of Rashida Jones's character and Bill Murray, her father. Like, they're back and forth with regards to him being kind of like a misogynist or like a ladies' man, like in the most derogatory sense, like always hitting on women, like in the fact that he is like, I can't remember how old Bill Murray is specifically. He's like at least in his 70s, but like whether they're sitting at a restaurant and he's like making comments to the waitress, or he's trying to basically rationalize like the evolution of human beings and how that is why men act the way they do, or like why they look at women and like objectify women the way they do. I thought that
he
was
does
like
a lot of mansplaining as well.
Oh, for sure. And that's another interesting aspect that like Sofia Coppola put into the dialogue. But yeah, I thought that was the most impressive, like surprising thing really, was that it was very much a like condemnation of Bill Murray's character in a lot of ways. Like it doesn't ever say, you know, he's a bad guy or like he's a bad dad or like a bad partner or anything like that specifically, but it's kind of laying out his behavior and like his history and saying like this isn't really what you necessarily want to be or like what you want to look for in like a father necessarily or a partner. And you know, Rashida Jones making comments to him or like criticizing him, especially towards the end. You know, I thought that was like well done, and that definitely earned it some extra points on the back.
Yeah, I think when they're in the hotel room and during the storm and having like the shouting match and everything, not really shouting, she's just kind of ripping into him about everything.
Yeah,
Rashida Jones definitely like blows Bill Murray out of the water when it comes to like the emotional aspect, I would say. Like they like go steady with the comedy, but I think she definitely like carries the brunt of the drama.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Does it extremely well. But I was gonna say, going back to like all of the stuff that you mentioned about Bill Murray's character and how he's written and the like misogyny and everything, like 100% valid. But I think it's also a testament to Bill Murray and his just like natural charm and stuff that like, even though we know that every single thing that he's doing is like is wrong and is bad and is not what you like, and especially in 2020 is like not what men should be like, but he's still like, you still find yourself like enjoying him and laughing and being charmed by him, that he's just like, as bad as he is, he's still like likable.
Yeah, and that's definitely a testament to like Sofia Coppola. Of course, her and Bill Murray have a great relationship that dates back years and years. So it makes sense that he would be in this film, but just I imagine this was written for him. I don't know if that's like true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me.
With
and
their
I think
history,
I think that would make sense because, as you said, he manages to play it with his, you know, his ability as an actor and his charisma and his, you know, charm. He can kind of play it both ways, and it's directed where you can appreciate him and understand him, but you can also say to yourself, okay, that's wrong, or that's, you know, that's not a trait that is like ideal or something that should be like commended or anything like that. And I think, you know, they, as you said, they do have a lot of humor that kind of sprinkled throughout. And Rashida Jones takes on more of the dramatic elements. She like again, it's more on her with that side of it. But I thought that the story did a pretty good job of it is a mystery in a way, because you don't know whether or not the husband is cheating. It really is, you're in the perspective of her, you're aligned with her point of view. So the things that Bill Murray is saying, her father is saying as like clues or hints, like you're like, okay, I see that is kind of concerning, and I'm believing Bill Murray's character here. Or you can choose not to believe him. You can choose basically whatever you want. But the info is laid out for you to kind of make a decision. I thought that was really well done, and that definitely kept me more engaged. And I thought the way that Sofia Coppola handled that was good. I do think, though, one of the things that you were saying you wanted to hit on was the ending.
Right.
And it does, again, it is like a mystery. It builds up throughout. You get more hints and clues, and you're kind of following a trail. And eventually we do have to get an answer one way or another. Is he cheating? Is he not? And I think you're wondering, is the reveal not dramatic enough? Is it anticlimactic at all?
Right. I feel like
preferred a different way for it to go.
I feel like for a movie that's like built up about surrounding this whole thing of like whether trying to figure out if your spouse is cheating, like it's, again, I mentioned that it's kind of like played for jokes the whole time, like lighthearted, but also, and he's like not the husband, Bill Murray is like kind of using this life-altering possibility for his daughter, for Rashida Jones' character, but they're like poking fun at it and using it for an adventure and like a lighthearted caper and everything. But like, it's, huge, heavy emotional stuff, and like you can see that throughout the movie, like the weight of it, the effect of everything. Like Rashida Jones does a great job of kind of like, okay, I'm laughing along, but like you can tell that she's like carrying this around with her.
She has a lot on her face.
Right.
Like she does a really good job with more like subtle aspects of like you get
right.
vibe from her. You know what I mean?
But in most movies, I would wager that if you're spending the whole time building this up, like at the end, something's going to happen, whether it's, okay, there is nothing and the person gets upset because you were accusing them of something, or, okay, you do find something and everything blows up and it falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of like, I won't reveal which way it goes. But it just kind of like, they figure out the answer and then it's just kind of like, oh, that? Okay. And it just like kind of, it just kind of like ends. And so like on the one hand, like I liked that because the way like you were talking about New York City and everything, like this is kind of like a very real, very like authentic sort of movie. It has that feel. So it's like, okay, well, and sure, I mentioned all those things in movies, but in real life, not everything always has to blow up into some dramatic escalation. So like I could appreciate it on that hand, but like as a movie, I kind of wish kind of like the whole theme throughout, like I wish we'd gone a little bit deeper with the characters. Like I would imagine that what does end up happening, the way that the character reacts, I don't think is how they would react in real life necessarily. Like if they were, whether they were caught cheating or accused of cheating, like there would be more of kind of like outrage on both sides, or just sort of kind of take offense to something.
Right. Okay. So on the flip side of that, I'm going to say that I kind of loved this ending, and I thought the reveal, the reaction, and the way it's resolved was perfect because, well, it ties up some loose ends that had been planted earlier. You may or may not know what I'm referring to, but they do a great job of kind of cleaning up everything that was hinted at or was used as a clue one way or the other. And I think, as you said, Bill Murray is using this whole theory and like kind of about him cheating as an excuse to go on this adventure with his daughter, and he's buying into it. And the key thing to remember is that he was like a cheater. He cheated on his wife. He left his wife, her mother. And he himself has been, someone who hasn't been faithful. He is, a womanizer, and we see that again throughout with comments he makes to women, the way he acts around them. But the fact that he did cheat on and leave the mother of Rashida Jones's character, that definitely informs where the story goes and the way that Rashida Jones's character thinks about what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, it's all about the perspective. And I think that the way he influences her perspective and he influences our perspective as well definitely has, I just really liked how they set it up, they revealed, and it really, as you said, it could have been one of two ways as far as a reaction and just, okay, what's realistic, what isn't. But for me, it was just it was kind of subversive in a way, because you definitely expect it to be like, oh gosh, this is going to kind of blow up no matter what happens. But for me, it was kind of refreshing and surprising in a good way. And we can't get into spoilers, obviously, but I liked a lot how it was resolved and how it was, again, not totally what I was expecting, but it felt right to me, and it felt like, for a movie that was so caught up in kind of anxieties and speculation, all these other things about these different clues and things like that, the way it was all tied up and revealed, and the way the characters were left at the end, whether it was her and her husband, her and her father, those relationships, and then they have these children that are also factoring into the story. I just thought it was well done, and it was about as pleasant as I could have asked, given everything that led into it.
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of presented it both ways in how the ending could have gone and how you could take it, but I definitely didn't my feelings on the ending did not spoil anything about like the movie as a whole. I still really enjoyed it all. Like I said, I gave it an 85 out of 100. I thought it was 4 stars, one of the better movies that I've seen this year. Still kind of a rough year in general. But
Yeah.
I really liked
Yeah.
it. I would definitely recommend it. I think that it's something that I know it's kind of hard to do Apple TV Plus just because it's not really top tier as far as like wealth of content, like how much stuff you're going to get out of it. But I would recommend that if you have not used your Apple TV Plus free trial yet, I would recommend doing that to check this out. And while you're there, check out Ted Lasso as well. Makes it worth your while. I haven't really gotten into any of the other stuff like the morning show or some of the other shows that they have, but hopefully they can use this to sort of, they kind of have Apple and A24 have a little bit of a relationship. So maybe this could be something to lead into more content for them. But On the Rocks, 2 thumbs up from Zach. I really liked it.
I give it a thumb up over here. Again, it is worth checking out if you have access to Apple TV Plus right now. If you're considering, doing the free trial, like Zach said, give it a look when you get the chance. Especially if you're thinking about the free trial too, maybe wait a little bit later into the season. I know that Wolf Walkers is a very acclaimed and likely Oscar-nominated animated film that's on the way as well. So maybe you can do 2 birds with 1 stone when that finally comes out. I believe either later this month or in December. So yeah, definitely give it a look. It's a, again, as you said, very lighter, more fun, comedic movie than some of the things we've been getting. And I think in a year like this, it couldn't hurt to get some of that in your system.
Definitely. Well, that is it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening to this quick episode of Inside the Film Room compared to some of the lengthier ones we've been putting out lately, but we really appreciate all of you tuning in and week out, and we'll keep making all of this great content for you on the podcast and on the website.
Yes, thank you all for listening. We truly appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Give us a like on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can also have access to the podcast episodes. All of those can be found at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. Like Johnny said, we're on YouTube. Go ahead and get us on Amazon, Google Podcasts. Wherever you can listen, we are there. Subscribe, rate, give us a 5-star review. We'll really appreciate that. And be sure to tune in next time for TBD movie review. We're still kind of in this drought. We're figuring it out. I may finally crank up Blade Runner 2049 and make Johnny's dreams come true. We'll see what happens. But be sure to tune in. We'll talk to you then.